The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the rolling hills, painting the dusty plains in shades of orange and gold. On the horizon, a lone ranch stood against the vast emptiness, its wooden fence weathered by time and wind. The rancher moved steadily across the land, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. His name was Cole Harris, a man whose life had been carved by the hard edges of the frontier. His hands were rough, his face lined from years under the sun, and his eyes carried the quiet weight of someone who had seen much yet said little. The ranch had been in his family for generations, and he had spent countless days working to keep it alive. Every morning he rose with the sun, and every night he made sure his animals were safe, his fences sturdy, and the land respected. It was a lonely life, but it was his life, and he bore it with pride. On this particular evening, the wind carried more than just dust. A faint sound, almost imperceptible, caught Cole's attention. At first, he thought it might be the wind whistling through the tall grass, but there was a rhythm to it, something irregular, uneven, almost human. He paused, squinting toward the horizon. That's when he saw her. A young woman was staggering across the field, her figure small against the expanse of the plains. She clutched at her side as if in pain, and each step seemed harder than the last. Cole's instincts kicked in immediately. He had faced dangers on these plains before. Wild animals, storms, rustlers. But this was different. This was someone in trouble. He moved quickly but carefully, not wanting to startle her. As he approached, the woman's face came into view. Her hair was tangled, her clothes dusty and torn at the edges. Her eyes widened in fear, but there was also a hint of relief when she noticed him. Cole raised a hand in a cautious greeting. "Hey there. Are you hurt?" His voice was deep, steady, carrying a calmness that could make even the most frightened traveler pause. The woman's voice was barely a whisper. It hurts," she said, pointing to her side. "I don't think I can walk much further." Cole moved closer, examining the injury. It looked like she had been riding, and perhaps a fall had caused it. There was swelling, a dark bruise forming, and some blood had seeped through her torn shirt. He knew she needed help, and fast. "Come on," he said firmly, offering her his arm. "I'll get you inside. We'll take care of you." At first she hesitated, looking around as if fearing someone might be following her. Then, with a small nod, she allowed him to guide her toward the ranch. The closer they got, the more relief she seemed to feel, though she still kept her voice low and cautious. Inside the ranch house, Cole helped her to a chair near the fire. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes and the way her body trembled slightly. "What happened?" he asked gently. She shook her head, her fingers gripping the edge of her skirt. "It's complicated," she whispered. I need to rest." There was no lie in her voice, just fear and weariness. Cole understood. On these plains, people often carried more than just physical pain. They carried burdens, secrets, and past troubles that were heavier than any injury. Cole moved to the cupboard, fetching clean water and a damp cloth. He dipped it in the cool water and returned to her side. "Here, let's clean this up a bit," he said. She flinched when the cloth touched her skin, but she didn't resist. There was a quiet bravery in her that reminded Cole of the many people who had come to the plains, seeking a new start. He could see that despite her fear, she had endured much to get this far. As he tended to her, he noticed the way she kept glancing toward the window, as if expecting something, or someone, to appear. Her body tensed each time the wind rattled the wooden shutters. Cole realized she wasn't just hurt physically. She was carrying fear that ran deeper than any wound. He said nothing, understanding that some things could only be earned, not forced. Hours passed. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky painted with the soft purples and pinks of twilight. Cole kept the fire going, its warm glow filling the small room. He sat across from her, not pressing for answers, just providing silent company. It was a skill he had learned over the years. Sometimes the most important thing you could offer was presence. The woman's voice returned, soft but steady. I don't know if I can stay here," she said. Cole raised an eyebrow. "Why not? You're safe here. No one's going to harm you." She shook her head, glancing away. It's not that simple. There are people looking for me. Bad people." Her words hung in the air, heavy with worry. Cole felt a familiar twinge of concern. On these plains, danger was never far, and it often came in the form of those who wanted to take advantage of the weak or the unprotected. Cole didn't push her further. Instead, he offered what he could: food, water, and a place to rest. "You don't have to tell me everything," he said. "Just stay here tonight. We'll figure it out in the morning." She nodded slowly, seeming to accept his offer of trust. That simple act of someone who would not demand her story, someone who would protect her in silence, seemed to bring a small measure of peace to her eyes. As the night deepened, the ranch grew quiet, save for the occasional creak of wood settling and the distant howl of a coyote. Cole kept watch by the window, his gaze scanning the horizon. His mind wandered to thoughts of the life he had built here, of the solitude he had embraced, and of the responsibilities that weighed heavily on his shoulders. Yet tonight there was a new presence in his life, one that brought both worry and a strange sense of purpose. He knew the plains were unforgiving, and the journey ahead for this young woman would not be easy, but neither would it be without him. At one point she whispered again, almost to herself, "It hurts. Down there too." Cole froze for a moment, realizing the depth of her suffering, not just the physical pain, but the emotional wounds that she carried. He didn't rush her or make assumptions. Instead, he offered her a handkerchief and a steady presence, letting her know that she was not alone. The night passed slowly. Cole listened to the wind, the distant calls of nocturnal animals, and the occasional rustle outside, but nothing approached the ranch. When the first rays of morning broke over the hills, the woman was still asleep, her face softened by the comfort of safety. Cole watched her for a moment, reflecting on the strange and sudden turn life had taken. He had spent years on this land, facing storms, rustlers, and wild animals, yet nothing had prepared him for the responsibility of protecting another human being from the invisible dangers of fear and past wounds. By sunrise, he had decided on a plan. The woman would stay at the ranch until she regained her strength, and then together, they would determine the safest path forward. Cole knew the journey would not be simple, nor would it be without challenges, but he also understood the value of trust, of patience, and of quiet courage. As he stepped outside to begin his morning chores, the plain stretched endlessly before him, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. The day promised work, decisions, and perhaps the beginnings of a bond that could withstand the hardships of frontier life. In the distance, the young woman stirred, waking to the sound of the ranch coming alive with the rhythm of survival and hope. And for the first time in a long while, Cole felt that even in a world so harsh, moments of kindness and trust could carve out spaces of light. The morning sun spilled across the ranch, turning the wooden fences a warm honey color. Birds called from the trees, and the distant hills shimmered with the heat that promised another long, dry day. Cole Harris was already up, moving through the chores with a practiced ease. He fed the horses, checked the fences, and tended to the small herd of cattle grazing near the corral. Each movement was careful and deliberate. Years of living on the plains had taught him that a rancher's life demanded focus and patience. Inside the house, the young woman stirred. Her name was Emily, though she had not shared it immediately, and she blinked sleepily at the morning light streaming through the window. For the first time since she had arrived, she felt some measure of safety. The warmth of the fire she had slept near, and the quiet strength of Cole gave her a fragile sense of calm. Yet even with the momentary comfort, her mind wandered to the reason she had come to the ranch in the first place. She had fled from something she could not yet speak aloud, and that fear still clung to her like a shadow. Cole noticed her as she came into the kitchen. "Morning," he said simply, giving her a small nod. "Sleep well?" His voice was gentle, without the roughness that the plains sometimes forced upon him. Emily nodded, hesitating before answering. She felt both grateful and wary. Grateful because of the kindness he had shown her, and wary because trust had not come easily in her life. "I slept," she said softly. She avoided meeting his eyes, unsure how much she could reveal. Cole poured coffee into 2 mugs and handed one to her. "Eat something," he said. "You need your strength. You've been through a lot." Emily accepted the mug with a trembling hand, and as she sipped the warm liquid, she felt some of the tension in her body begin to ease. The physical pain of her injury was still present, but the fear that had weighed so heavily on her mind felt a little lighter in Cole's calm presence. The morning passed slowly but steadily. Cole moved through the ranch work with Emily nearby, explaining small tasks she could do while sitting or resting. She swept the floor, organized supplies, and watched as he repaired a broken fence post. Even in these simple activities, there was a rhythm to life on the ranch that felt grounding. Emily began to feel a connection to this place, a place where the earth's demands were honest and the people's actions straightforward. But the peace could not last forever. As the sun climbed higher, Emily's secret pressed against the edges of her composure. She had not come to the ranch merely because of an accident or the need for shelter. There were people from her past, dangerous people, and their pursuit of her was relentless. Her eyes kept drifting to the horizon, scanning for any sign of movement. The fear that had haunted her for weeks began to tighten again. Cole noticed the way her hands trembled when she thought he wasn't looking. "You don't have to hide anything," he said gently, setting aside the hammer he had been using. Emily froze, caught off guard. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She had spent so long keeping secrets, running from danger, that the very idea of someone offering trust without question was almost frightening. I'm fine," she said, trying to mask the fear in her voice. But Cole had lived too long on the plains to be fooled by words alone. He sat beside her on a small bench outside the house, the sun warming their backs. "Emily," he began carefully, "whatever has been chasing you, you don't have to face it alone. Not here." His words were simple, but there was strength in them, the kind of strength that only comes from a life built on responsibility and survival. Emily felt a tear prick her eye. She had never been offered this kind of protection before, not in words, not in deeds. Slowly she began to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "There are men, people who wanted something I had. I didn't know who else to turn to." She paused, fighting to control her emotions. Cole listened quietly, letting her words flow without interruption. In the stillness of the morning, the sound of her voice seemed almost sacred against the backdrop of the wind and the distant lowing of cattle. Cole's mind worked quickly, thinking of ways to protect her without alarming her further. The ranch itself offered some natural safety. It was isolated, surrounded by open plains and hills that gave advance warning of anyone approaching. But isolation could be dangerous too. If the wrong people found her here, there would be no immediate help. He needed a plan. "Listen," Cole said finally. "We'll keep you here for now. You'll rest and we'll make sure you're safe. I know a few trails and hidden spots nearby. If things get dangerous, I'll know where to take you." Emily's eyes widened slightly. She had expected someone to turn her away or worse, to judge her. But here was someone offering not only shelter, but also a plan to keep her safe. Her shoulders relaxed a fraction. The first time in days she had felt even a small measure of hope. The day wore on and the sun climbed higher. Cole continued his chores, occasionally glancing at Emily to make sure she was comfortable. She watched him, fascinated by the quiet skill with which he handled the ranch work. Every movement was precise, deliberate, and efficient. It was clear that he had lived this life for decades, learning from mistakes and triumphs alike. Emily felt a mix of admiration and gratitude. She realized that she had stumbled into more than just a safe place. She had found someone who could be relied upon. As the afternoon approached, Emily decided to take a small walk around the edge of the ranch. The sun was warm but not harsh, and the breeze carried the scent of wild grasses and distant flowers. Cole followed at a distance, giving her space but remaining close enough to intervene if necessary. Emily felt the tension in her body begin to ease with each step. The openness of the plains, the steady rhythm of the land, and the quiet strength of Cole's presence made her feel grounded in a way she hadn't felt in weeks. They reached a small creek running along the edge of the property. Emily knelt beside it, letting her fingers trail in the cool water. "It's peaceful here," she said softly. Cole joined her, sitting on a rock nearby. "The plains can be harsh, but they have a way of showing you what matters," he said. His voice was calm, yet carried the weight of experience. Emily nodded, feeling the truth in his words. For a moment they sat in silence, listening to the water, the wind, and the distant call of a hawk. Emily wanted to tell him everything, but the memories were raw, the fear too close. Instead, she let the silence speak for her, trusting that Cole would understand. And in that silence, he did. He didn't push her, didn't demand answers. He simply remained, offering the quiet assurance that she was no longer alone. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the plains, Emily finally allowed herself to breathe deeply. The ranch, the land, and the man who had taken her in offered something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The fear of what was chasing her had not vanished, but it had lessened, dulled by the safety and trust she found here. Cole stood and stretched, the muscles in his arms and back taut from the day's work. "We should get back," he said, gesturing toward the ranch house. "Evening comes quickly and there's still work to do." Emily followed, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and comfort. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that for now she could rest, heal, and trust someone again. Back at the ranch house, Cole prepared a simple meal while Emily rested. She watched him move with the quiet efficiency of someone who had faced the challenges of the frontier and survived. There was a steadiness in his presence that made her feel safer than she had in months, and when he finally called her to eat, she joined him, grateful for the warmth of the food, the fire, and the companionship. That night, as the stars filled the sky above the plains, Emily lay near the fire, her body tired but her mind calmer. She realized that the journey ahead would be difficult, and that the threats chasing her were still real, but she also understood that she was no longer facing them alone. Cole Harris, the weathered rancher with the quiet strength and steady hands, had become her protector. And in the vast, unforgiving plains of the West, that was more valuable than anything else she could hope for. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the plains, casting a golden glow across the ranch. Cole Harris was already moving among the animals, his movements careful and precise. Today, though, there was a subtle change in the air. The wind carried with it a faint tension, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He could feel it, a sense that the calm of the ranch might not last forever. Emily stirred near the fire, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. She had slept better than the previous night, but the memory of the people chasing her lingered in her mind. Every shadow outside the window seemed to hold a hidden danger, and every distant noise made her heart leap. She knew that staying at the ranch provided safety, but the fear of being discovered never completely left her. She glanced at Cole, who was checking the horses in the corral. His presence was steadying, and yet she could tell from his stance that he was aware of the tension in the air too. Cole noticed her watching him. He approached slowly, keeping his voice calm. "You're thinking about them, aren't you?" Emily's eyes widened, as if caught. I can't help it," she admitted softly. They won't stop." Cole nodded, understanding more than she realized. In the West, threats were rarely just fleeting shadows. They were persistent, patient, and often cruel. But he had faced dangers before. Not just wild animals or storms, but people whose hearts were hardened by greed or violence. He had learned that preparation and awareness were the best defenses. "Listen," he said quietly. "I'll make sure they don't find you. But you need to stay calm and follow my instructions." Emily nodded, though the fear still trembled in her voice. Cole's mind raced, thinking through possible scenarios. The ranch was isolated, but the plains were wide and open. Any approach would be visible from a distance, giving him some warning. He would have to use every advantage the land offered to protect her. By midday, the tension grew. Cole was working on repairing a section of the fence near the edge of the property when he noticed movement in the distance. Squinting against the sun, he could just make out 3 figures on horseback, moving slowly but deliberately across the plains. His heart did not race. He had faced rustlers and intruders before, but his senses sharpened. These men were not lost travelers. They were looking for someone, and he knew immediately they were looking for Emily. "Emily," he called calmly, though urgency laced his voice. She came quickly, her eyes wide. "What is it?" she asked. Cole pointed toward the distant figures. "They're coming. We need to be ready." Fear and relief mixed in her expression. She was scared, but she also felt the reassurance that someone was standing between her and danger. Cole quickly moved her toward the house, giving her instructions. "Stay inside. Don't make a sound. I'll handle this." Emily nodded, trusting him completely. Cole moved with a quiet efficiency, gathering a rifle and checking the doors and windows. He positioned himself so that he had the best view of the approaching riders. The men were getting closer, their intentions clear in the determined way they rode. Cole's mind calculated every possibility. escape routes, defensive positions, and how to protect Emily without putting her in harm's way. Years of ranch life had taught him to stay calm under pressure, and now that skill was being tested in a very real way. The first rider called out, his voice carrying across the open plains. "We know you're hiding her." The words were harsh, cruel, and filled with menace. Emily shrank back inside, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Cole did not respond immediately. Instead, he kept his eyes on the riders, assessing their movements, waiting for the right moment to act. He knew that a rushed reaction could put Emily in danger. Patience, he reminded himself, was just as important as courage. The riders slowed as they approached the ranch, scanning the land. Cole remained behind the window, rifle steady, watching their every move. He noticed that the men were armed, but they seemed disorganized. This gave him a small advantage. If he could use the terrain wisely, he could protect Emily and buy time until they realized they were at a disadvantage. He needed to act decisively, but without unnecessary violence. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. "Cole, what are we going to do?" He looked at her, offering a calm reassurance. "We'll be fine. Just stay quiet and trust me." She nodded, trying to control the fear rising in her chest. Cole knew that the psychological strength of staying calm was as important as any physical defense he could make. The plains could be dangerous, but panic could make even a small threat much worse. As the men drew closer, Cole decided to use the high ground near the corral. From there, he could see all three riders and anticipate their moves. He stayed low, keeping out of sight as much as possible. The riders called out again, growing more frustrated. One of them dismounted, walking carefully toward the fence, trying to find a way onto the property. Cole held his position, watching, waiting for the exact right moment to intervene. Suddenly, one of the riders kicked at a gatepost and the noise echoed across the ranch. Cole tensed, ready to act, but held his fire. Instead, he waited for the rider to take a step closer, knowing that any aggressive move too early could endanger Emily. The man's impatience was obvious, and it was exactly the advantage Cole needed. From his hidden position, he stepped out, rifle in hand, and called firmly, "Stop right there!" The sound was loud and commanding, echoing across the open land. The riders froze, startled. Cole's voice carried authority, and his calm but firm stance made it clear he was not a man to be trifled with. "I don't want trouble," he continued, "but I will defend this ranch and the people in it." For a moment, there was silence. The leader of the riders, a tall man with a weathered face and sharp eyes, glared at Cole. He realized that this was not an ordinary rancher. This was someone who knew the land and had the courage to defend what was his. After a tense pause, the riders began to reconsider. Cole's steady presence and the visible preparation he had made for defense created doubt in their minds. The leader spat on the ground and muttered something under his breath. "This isn't worth it," he finally said. They turned their horses, mounting quickly and riding back across the plains, their threat removed for now but not forgotten. Cole lowered the rifle, watching until they disappeared over the horizon. Only then did he allow himself to breathe fully. Emily emerged slowly from the house, her hands trembling slightly. They're gone?" she asked, relief and disbelief mingling in her voice. Cole nodded. "For now. They won't give up easily, but they'll think twice before coming back." She stepped closer to him, grateful and shaken. The experience had been frightening, yet the reassurance of his calm strength had made her feel safe. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel a small measure of hope. Cole helped her back inside, making sure she was comfortable and checking the doors once more. "You see," he said quietly, "sometimes people chase what isn't theirs, but courage, preparation, and a clear mind can keep you safe." Emily listened, absorbing the lesson, knowing that survival on the plains was as much about strategy and calmness as it was about strength. The rest of the afternoon was spent tending to minor repairs, feeding the animals, and preparing for the possibility that the riders might return. Cole remained watchful, scanning the horizon, teaching Emily small skills she could use if danger came again. Emily listened intently, her fear slowly replaced by determination. She realized that while the threat from her past still existed, she was not helpless. Cole had shown her that she could face challenges with courage and careful thinking. As evening fell, the sky turning shades of orange and purple once again, the ranch returned to its quiet rhythm. Emily helped with the fire. Cole checked the fences one last time, and the animals settled down for the night. The tension from the day lingered, but it was now tempered by the understanding that they could face danger together. Emily felt a deep gratitude for Cole, whose calm courage had kept them safe and whose presence had given her hope she hadn't felt in a long time. Before turning in for the night, Emily whispered softly, "Thank you for protecting me." Cole nodded, offering only a quiet smile. Words were not necessary. The events of the day had spoken for themselves. They had faced a threat, held their ground, and survived. And in that survival, a bond was forming, one built on trust, respect, and quiet courage. As the stars filled the night sky over the plains, Cole kept watch by the window, rifle close but heart calm. Emily slept more soundly than she had before, knowing that she was not alone. The plains could be harsh and unforgiving, but together they had learned that courage, trust, and careful action could make even the wildest land a place of safety and hope. The morning sun broke over the horizon with a soft golden glow, painting the plains in warm light. Cole Harris was already moving through the ranch, tending to the animals and checking the fences for any weak spots. The night had passed quietly, but the tension from the previous day lingered in the air. The distant hills held secrets, and Cole's instincts told him that the danger from yesterday was not over. He could feel it in the way the wind shifted and in the quiet that hung over the land. Emily awoke with a start, the memory of the riders from the day before fresh in her mind. Her body still ached, but more than that, her heart thumped with the lingering fear of pursuit. She rose carefully, not wanting to disturb Cole, who was already outside working. She peeked through the window and saw him moving among the horses, his posture calm but alert. He was always so steady, and even in the face of danger his movements were deliberate and confident. That steadiness gave Emily a small measure of reassurance. She had come to trust him, and in a place as wild and unforgiving as the plains, trust was a rare and precious thing. Cole noticed her watching and nodded briefly. "Morning," he said. His voice carried warmth, but there was also a hint of caution. Emily returned the nod and stepped outside, careful not to interrupt his work. "Are they coming back?" she asked softly, her voice barely above the whisper of the wind. Cole shook his head slowly. "I don't know," he admitted. "But we need to be prepared just in case. On these plains, danger doesn't wait for a convenient time." Emily nodded, understanding the truth of his words. She had learned already that the frontier was unforgiving, and one had to be alert at all times. The day passed with a tense rhythm. Cole moved through his tasks with focused precision, checking the animals, repairing fences, and scanning the horizon for any sign of the approaching riders. Emily stayed nearby, helping where she could and learning the small skills necessary to navigate the ranch safely. She began to notice how much thought and care went into every movement Cole made. Even something as simple as stacking hay bales or mending a fence was done with careful planning and attention to detail. It was clear to her that survival on the plains depended on skill, patience, and awareness. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, Cole's eyes caught movement on the distant ridge. 3 riders were approaching again, this time moving faster and with a sense of urgency. They had returned. Cole's jaw tightened. He knew that their return meant the threat was more serious than before. He quickly moved to Emily, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "Stay inside and don't make a sound," he instructed. "I'll handle this. Trust me." Emily nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. She had no doubt in her mind that Cole was capable, but the fear of what these men might do still gripped her. Cole positioned himself near the high ground of the corral, taking advantage of the terrain to give himself the best possible view of the approaching riders. He held his rifle steady, his eyes scanning every movement. The riders were armed, and their expressions were hard and determined. It was clear that they were not just searching. They were intent on taking what they wanted, and they would not be easily deterred. Cole knew that careful planning and decisive action would be necessary to protect Emily and the ranch. The first rider called out as they approached, his voice carrying across the open plains. "We know she's here. Come out or face the consequences." Cole did not respond immediately. Instead, he stayed low, waiting for the riders to get closer, knowing that any premature action could endanger Emily. He observed their behavior, noting their impatience and lack of coordination. This gave him a small advantage, which he intended to use. Emily watched from the safety of the house, her breath shallow and her heart pounding. She could see Cole standing firm, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the rising tension outside. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel hope. Cole had protected her before, and she trusted that he would do so again. She whispered a quiet prayer, not for herself, but for the courage and skill of the man who had taken her under his protection. As the riders drew closer, Cole called out firmly, "Stop right there. You will not harm anyone on this ranch." His voice carried authority and confidence. The riders froze, momentarily taken aback by the firmness of his tone. Cole's stance was strong and unwavering, his eyes sharp and alert. He did not lower his rifle, but he did not act aggressively either. His presence alone was a warning. The leader of the riders, a tall man with a hard face, shouted back, "Step aside, rancher. This doesn't concern you." Cole's voice remained steady. "It concerns me when you threaten the people on my land. Leave now or face the consequences." The rider hesitated, sensing the determination in Cole's voice. There was a long pause, the tension so thick that it seemed to hang over the plains like a storm cloud ready to break. Suddenly, one of the riders moved toward the fence looking for a weak point. Cole acted quickly, using the advantage of the high ground and the element of surprise. He shouted again, "Stop!" and fired a warning shot into the ground near their horses. The sound was deafening in the open plains. The horses reared slightly, startling the riders and forcing them to pause. Cole's precise timing and calm execution had created the upper hand without causing unnecessary harm. The riders regrouped, realizing that the rancher was not to be underestimated. The leader spat on the ground and muttered something under his breath. "This isn't worth it," he said finally. They mounted their horses and began to retreat, though their eyes remained filled with frustration and determination. Cole watched them carefully, ensuring they disappeared over the horizon before lowering his rifle. Emily emerged slowly from the house, her hands trembling with relief. They left?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. Cole nodded. "For now," he said. "But we need to remain vigilant. They might return, and we need to be ready if they do." Emily took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of gratitude and renewed fear. She was safe for now, but the threat still lingered. The afternoon passed with careful preparation. Cole reinforced the fences, checked the animals, and made sure Emily was comfortable. He taught her how to recognize signs of approaching danger, how to move quietly, and how to stay calm under pressure. Emily listened intently, absorbing every lesson. She realized that survival on the plains required not only physical strength, but also mental sharpness and careful observation. As evening approached, the sky turning shades of orange and pink, Cole and Emily worked together to prepare a meal. The simple act of cooking and tending to daily needs was comforting, a reminder that life continued even in the face of danger. Emily felt a deep sense of trust in Cole, and for the first time she allowed herself to relax slightly, knowing that she was protected by someone capable and strong. The night fell over the ranch with a quiet calm, the stars twinkling above the vast plains. Cole kept watch by the window, rifle at the ready but his heart steady. Emily slept peacefully, the first true rest she had experienced in weeks. The events of the day had tested their courage and resolve, but they had emerged stronger and more united. The plains remained dangerous, but together, they had faced the threat and survived. In the quiet of the night, Cole reflected on the events that had brought Emily to the ranch. He had seen many dangers in his life, but protecting someone from Unseen threats, fear, desperation, and human greed required a different kind of strength. He realized that courage was not only about facing physical danger, but also about standing firm in the face of uncertainty and protecting those who could not protect themselves. Emily woke briefly to the sound of Cole moving outside, checking the fences and ensuring the ranch remained secure. She felt a surge of gratitude for the man who had taken her in, defended her, and taught her the ways of the land. She understood that the threat from her past was not over, but she also knew that she would not face it alone. Cole's calm presence, courage, and wisdom were a shield that she could rely on, and that knowledge gave her hope for the days ahead. The night passed slowly but peacefully. Emily slept more soundly than she had in weeks, and Cole maintained a vigilant watch over the ranch. The events of the day had brought them closer, forging a bond of trust and mutual respect. The plains were harsh, unforgiving, and full of danger, but they had faced the threat together and emerged stronger. As dawn approached, the sky turning pale blue with the promise of a new day, Cole and Emily prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. They knew that the dangers of the West were far from over, but they also knew that together they could face whatever came their way. Courage, trust, and careful planning had kept them safe so far, and those qualities would continue to guide them as they navigated the challenges of life on the frontier. The first light of dawn spread gently over the plains, turning the sky a soft pink and gold. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh grass and the faint aroma of smoke from last night's fire. Cole Harris moved quietly through the ranch, checking the fences and feeding the animals. The events of the past days had left a heavy weight in his mind, but there was also a sense of calm now. The immediate threat had passed, and the ranch seemed to breathe with a quiet, steady rhythm once more. Emily stirred near the fire, her body aching less than it had in days. The nights on the ranch had offered her a measure of safety she had not known for a long time. Her eyes rested on Cole as he worked, observing his careful movements and the quiet confidence he carried. She felt a deep gratitude for his presence, not just for protecting her from the danger outside, but for providing a sense of stability and hope. She had come to the ranch running from fear and pain, and now, though the world was still wide and uncertain, she felt she had a place to rest and recover. Cole noticed her watching and gave a brief nod, acknowledging her presence without interruption. "Morning," he said softly. Emily smiled faintly, a small sign of relief and comfort. The bond between them had grown over the past days, forged in trust, courage, and the shared experience of facing danger together. Emily felt a sense of belonging she had not felt before, a feeling that the harsh plains and the struggles of life could be met with someone by her side. The morning passed with a gentle rhythm. Cole continued his chores, and Emily assisted where she could, taking on lighter tasks to regain her strength. She cleaned the small kitchen, organized supplies, and helped feed the animals under Cole's guidance. Each task was simple, yet the act of working together created a quiet harmony. The ranch, with its vast openness and natural beauty, offered a sense of grounding that Emily had not experienced in her life, filled with constant fear and flight. As the sun climbed higher, the sound of distant hooves reached Cole's ears. He paused, scanning the horizon carefully. Emily noticed the tension returning to his posture and asked quietly, "Are they back?" Cole shook his head slightly. "No, just some cattle moving from the neighboring ranch," he reassured her. Yet he remained alert. Experience had taught him that danger could appear unexpectedly, and the safety they had built could be fleeting if one was careless. They spent the afternoon tending to the ranch together. Emily began to feel more capable with each task, learning the practical skills needed to survive on the plains. She mended fences with Cole's guidance, learned to feed the animals efficiently, and understood the subtle signs of approaching weather changes. Each lesson made her feel stronger, more confident, and more at home in a world that had once seemed hostile and unkind. During a brief rest by the creek that ran along the edge of the ranch, Emily spoke softly. "I never thought I'd feel safe again," she admitted. Cole looked at her, his expression calm and understanding. "It takes time," he said. "The world can be harsh, but safety isn't just about avoiding danger. It's about knowing who to trust and having the courage to face what comes." Emily nodded, letting his words sink in. She had trusted very few people in her life. but Cole had shown her that trust could be given carefully, and that it could bring strength rather than weakness. As the sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the ranch, Emily and Cole prepared the evening meal together. The act of cooking and tending to daily life brought a comforting sense of normalcy. Emily realized that despite the dangers she had faced, she could find peace in the simple routines of life, feeding animals, tending fires, and helping someone who had offered her protection without question. When the meal was ready, they sat together near the fire. The sky was now painted in deep oranges and purples, the plains quiet except for the occasional call of a distant bird. Emily felt a sense of calm she had not experienced in months. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice filled with sincere gratitude. "For everything. For protecting me, for trusting me, for letting me stay here." Cole nodded, his eyes meeting hers with quiet warmth. "You don't need to thank me. We look out for each other here. That's what matters." The stars began to appear overhead, twinkling across the vast night sky. Emily looked up, feeling small but also safe in the expanse of the plains. The past days had been filled with fear and uncertainty, but now she could finally see a future where she could rest, recover, and even hope. The threat that had driven her to the ranch still lingered in the world beyond the hills, but with Cole's guidance and protection, she felt capable of facing whatever came next. Night fell fully over the ranch, the air cool and calm. Emily lay near the fire, her body tired but her mind at peace. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the fear, the flight, and the constant uncertainty. But she also thought about the courage she had found in herself, the trust she had given and received, and the bond she had formed with Cole. The plains could be harsh and unforgiving, but they had taught her resilience, patience, and the value of standing together against adversity. Cole kept watch by the window, his rifle nearby, but his mind at ease. The events of the past days had tested both of them, and they had faced every challenge with courage and careful planning. Emily slept soundly, the fear that had haunted her finally eased, replaced by the quiet assurance of safety. Cole's presence was a steady anchor, a reminder that even in a world full of danger, trust, preparation, and courage could bring hope. The following days passed with a gentle rhythm. Emily's strength returned gradually as she learned more about ranch life and became accustomed to the steady routine. She helped Cole with chores, rode the horses carefully under his guidance, and explored the surrounding plains with caution. Each day reinforced her confidence, teaching her that she could face challenges and overcome them with skill, patience, and determination. Cole and Emily's bond grew stronger with each passing day. They shared stories of their lives, laughed quietly over small successes on the ranch, and found comfort in each other's presence. Emily realized that despite the harshness of the plains, she had found a place where she belonged, a place where her courage and resilience were valued, and where she could find safety without fear of judgment. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily stood beside Cole at the edge of the corral, watching the sky turn shades of orange and purple. "I never thought I'd have a place like this," she said softly. Cole nodded. "It's not easy, but you've earned your place here. You've faced fear, and you've learned to trust. That makes you stronger than most." Emily felt a warmth in her heart, a feeling she had not experienced in a long time, a sense of belonging, safety, and hope for the future. The ranch settled into a quiet night once more. The animals rested, the fire crackled gently, and the stars filled the sky with their soft light. Emily lay near the fire, reflecting on everything that had happened. She had come to the plains running from danger, unsure of where to turn, and now she had found a home and a protector. The future remained uncertain, but she knew she was no longer alone. She had courage, skills, and someone she could trust, and that was more valuable than anything else in the world. Cole watched over the ranch one last time before retiring for the night. The plains stretched endlessly, beautiful and unforgiving, but they had faced the challenges together and emerged stronger. Emily slept peacefully, her dreams free from fear for the first time in weeks. Cole's presence, his courage, and his quiet guidance had given her more than protection. They had given her hope, stability, and the chance to rebuild her life. As the night deepened, the fire burned low, casting a warm glow across the small ranch house. Outside, the plains lay quiet and still, the vast land holding both danger and promise. Emily and Cole had faced the threats together. learned to trust one another, and discovered that courage and patience could turn even the harshest frontier into a place of safety and hope. In the quiet of the night, the ranch stood as a symbol of resilience, trust, and the enduring human spirit, a place where both the rancher and the young woman had found strength, peace, and a new beginning.